Hi there, and welcome to episode 972 of Stand Up with Pete Dominic. I am very excited to be joined by one of my favorite regular guests, David Rothkopf of Daily Beast and Deep State Radio, and so much more. He joins me today starting at 20 minutes in after the news. Rothkopf and I had another great conversation. Always learned so much from his perspective, experience, and credibility. I know you're going to love it. Today is Thursday. It's the 16th of November. And that means I will be hosting a happy hour hangout, as I call it. The Stand Up with Pete Dominic happy hour hangout starts at 8 p.m. every Thursday night, unless you are told otherwise. If you're a subscriber, you will get a link emailed to you. If you're not getting that, let me know. And welcome to 3 new paid subscribers yesterday. Very cool. Haven't had that happen in quite a long time. I have no idea what sparked it. I wish it did, but I'm very happy to have Stasia, Will, and Goody. Stasia, Will, and Goody, welcome to Stand Up. Thank you very much for signing up, and I hope that you'll stop by the Hangout and tell us a little bit about yourselves. Always great to have new people, new voices, and I hope to see you there tonight, 8 p.m. East. The only time zone that matters. Also, thank you for sending your nature photos. Can't get enough of them. Get outside, take a picture, send it to me, and I will share it each and every day for the subscriber email that usually goes out as the show gets posted by midnight. Get outside, send me your hashtag vitamin N right now. Also want to apologize for a couple of editing mistakes that I had on the last 2 episodes. Some gaps in my intro yesterday of Brian Beutler, who was so good. Thanks for all the feedback for him on social media, those of you who tweeted, etc. Adam, thank you very much for that. And then the day before that show, I had an audio clip where you couldn't hear somebody. Always trying to catch those. I've been pretty good. Had a good run, didn't I? And then 2 days in a row. So hopefully we'll be done with that for a little while. But always let me know. You can't let me, especially if you're listening early in the morning or right when I post it, usually at midnight. Definitely reach out to me and let me know. And also, just let me know what you like and don't. As always, who are your favorite guests? Who do you want to hear more of, less of? standupwithpete@gmail.com. Love and desperately need your feedback. David Rothkopf coming up, but right now, let's get to some news and notes, headlines, and sound, starting with, I guess, probably the big story yesterday was that President Biden met with President Xi of China, and Rothkopf and I talked a little bit about what to expect. Nothing too crazy came out of that meeting. President Biden gave a press conference after in California. It aired around the 8 p.m. hour East last night, because that's the only time zone that matters. And President Biden took about 5 or 7 questions, almost all of them related to China, U.S.-China relations, and some on, I think, on Gaza, Israel. You'll read about that in the morning news and hear about it as well. I'm sure that is really probably the biggest story, obviously, on Wednesday. I saw this news in a new poll. U.S. support for Israel has eroded. 68% of Americans in a new Reuters poll support a ceasefire. Only 32% of respondents agreed that the U.S. should back Israel, a drop of nearly 10 points from a month ago when the conflict first started. Reuters noted that more than 11,000 Palestinians have died since the start of Israel's invasion, with approximately children accounting for about 40% of the deaths, according to the Gaza Ministry of Health. So that's a pretty big story yesterday. Also, Elon Musk has shown more anti-Semitism. He replied to a very anti-Semitic tweet on Wednesday, stating his agreement with it. The headline at the right-wing conservative website Drudge Report says it all. Musk, Jews getting what they deserve. So that was horrific and ugly. Lawyers for Donald Trump called for a mistrial in the civil fraud case against him in New York, arguing that the judge was politically biased against him. I don't think that's going to happen. Irate over a bipartisan measure to prevent a government shutdown, far-right Republicans blocked a separate spending bill. In New Jersey, the wife of the governor, Phil Murphy, announced that she was running for the U.S. Senate seat held by Robert Menendez, who's been charged with accepting bribes for having a ton of cash and gold bars in his jacket pocket and working with the Egyptians and basically selling them our weapons and intelligence without authorization. Really bad, all alleged. But Tammy Murphy is running for his seat in the U.S. Senate, and that'll be an interesting situation to watch unfold. And how is he still in the Senate? Menendez, that is. Those are just some of the headlines I've got for you from Tuesday. And now here is some of the audio I gathered throughout the day to share as well. First, Republicans are at each other's throats, especially in the House of Representatives. Here is crazy angry Chip Roy going after his Republican colleagues.
One thing. I want my Republican colleagues to give me one thing, one, that I can go campaign on and say we did. One. Anybody sitting in the complex, if you want to come down to the floor and come explain to me one material, meaningful, significant thing the Republican majority has done besides, well, I guess it's not as bad as the Democrat.
Well, I think we've got ourselves a campaign ad for his opponent or any Democrat that wants to prove that they've done nothing. Absolutely nothing. But try to fight each other. And now here are three of the crackiest of crackpot conspiracy theorists in the entire Republican Party somehow getting to sit across from the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray. Let's start with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who may file an article of impeachment because Chris Wray doesn't follow her on Twitter. This is so cringe.
Were you aware of this?
Congresswoman, as I said, I haven't seen the photos that you're holding up before.
Maybe, well, I posted them on my Twitter account. It's public. You know, maybe
I don't
you guys
spend a lot of time on Twitter.
Well, you know, I'm sure you do, because the Department of Homeland Security, organized with other offices, has censored many Americans, including myself.
I'm not part of the Department of Homeland Security.
Right, Mr. Wray, you should be interested in investigating terrorism.
She has no idea where he works. He's, of course, at the Department of Justice. Here is Congresswoman Kat Kammack. I'm not even familiar with her, but she apparently, Aaron Rupar on Twitter writes, wants to talk to the manager after the head of the Department of Homeland Security, who they tried to impeach but couldn't, told her he's not tracking her favorite Hunter Biden conspiracy theories. Take a listen.
Are you aware that on October 19th, 2020, the statement used by various media organizations and social media businesses to downplay and censor the Post reporting before the 2020 presidential election?
I'm sorry. With the indulgence of additional time, Mr. Chairman, could you ask that question just at a bit of a slower pace?
Are you aware that on October 19th, 2020, the statement was used, the statement that was signed by Brennan, Clapper, and Colby was used by multiple media organizations, social media businesses, to downplay and censor the story about the Hunter Biden political influence right before the 2020 presidential election?
I am not tracking that, Congresswoman.
Wow. For as much time and effort as you are putting into a Homeland Intelligence experts group, that seems shocking that you wouldn't be tracking that.
No, it doesn't. But thank you for playing. They somehow have this theory that the Democrats, that the government, that the FBI withheld information about Hunter Biden that would have changed the outcome of the election, which is completely impossible to prove and stupid. But there's a much better example of that in the 2016 election when the head of the FBI came out and announced that they were investigating Hillary Clinton. Remember that? How come Republicans didn't care about that one, which definitely probably had an effect on Hillary Clinton, according to a lot of political analysts. But the fact that they didn't show Hunter Biden's dick pics, they thought was going to definitely hurt Joe Biden's election chances. That one makes a lot of sense. And now here is crazy, the craziest of them all, maybe even crazier than MGT. It's Clay Higgins of Louisiana and his theory that many on the right will not give up, that there were FBI agents undercover dressed as Trump supporters, and they led and inspired the insurrection on January 6th. Also, ghost buses.
If you are asking whether the violence at the Capitol on January 6th was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources and or agents, the answer is emphatically
You're saying no?
No.
You're saying no?
Not
okay.
Violence orchestrated by FBI sources or agents.
Are you familiar with you know what a ghost vehicle is? Director of the FBI certainly should. You know what a ghost bus is?
A ghost bus?
Ghost bus.
I'm not sure I've used that term before.
Okay.
Well,
it's pretty common in law enforcement. It's a vehicle.
Law enforcement.
That's used for.
He's not good at talking.
Secret purposes. It's painted over. these two buses in the middle here, they were the first to arrive at Union Station on January 6th, 0500. I have all this evidence. I'm showing you a tip of this iceberg.
Mr. Chairman.
These two buses are painted completely white.
Point of order.
This is a very significant hearing, Mr. Chairman, and these buses are nefarious in nature and were filled with FBI informants dressed as Trump supporters and deployed onto our Capitol on January 6th. Your day is coming, Mr. Ray.
Mr. Higgins. I now recognize Mr.
All right, your day is coming, Mr. Ray. Sounds like a threat to me, to the head of the FBI by crazy Clay Higgins and his crazy, wild conspiracy theories about ghost buses. I felt like Shaggy and the crew from Scooby-Doo were going to show up to investigate. And now let's listen to a serious legislator, Congressman Jim McGovern of Massachusetts, who I like a lot. I used to interview, used to come on the old show. I should reach out to him and get him back on. But here is 2 minutes of Representative McGovern on the House floor yesterday, taking apart House Republicans.
Mr. Speaker, House Republicans are a minority party that is masquerading as a majority party. And I say that because I think my friends on the other side don't want to actually be in charge anymore. It is easier to be in the minority when you're a Republican. They think all you have to do is vote no on everything. It's harder to be in the majority. And it's especially hard because the Republican Party no longer represents a coherent political ideology that seeks to solve problems or govern. They just want to scream and yell about how this place is broken when they're the ones who broke it. They want to use crisis and scandal to mask their own selfishness and sedition, and to cover up their own incompetence and ineffectiveness. But the American people see through it. They know this Republican majority is a disaster, a national embarrassment. They have normalized dysfunction. We have Republican members of Congress literally assaulting each other in the hallways, threatening to punch people in committee hearings, getting into fights on the House floor and having their supporters threaten each other's families with violence. That is the truth. They have wasted away their majority fighting amongst themselves and acting like babies, focusing on retaliation and revenge, pursuing ridiculous impeachment inquiry sideshows, conditioning aid to our allies on tax cuts for billionaires here at home, screaming about the deficit when they keep passing bills that blow up the deficit. And I say to people watching this at home, you might not agree with Democrats on everything, but we are Team Normal. And Republicans are Team totally off the deep end nuts. I clean that up for the floor, Mr. Speaker, for, civility. Democrats ran this place like professionals, and Republicans are running it into the ground. Democrats fight for the people. Republicans only care about fighting with each other. Democrats behave like adults.
Well, there it is. And if for anybody who doesn't agree with that analysis from James McGovern, here it is demonstrated by the senator who tried to fight the head of the Teamsters yesterday. This is Mark Wayne Mullen, which is the redneckiest of all redneck names, on Fox News yesterday.
Because Bernie was saying this isn't how we behave, and I says, you brought the thug in. You know how he behaved. You've seen this his tweets to me, or X, I don't know what you call him, but where he's tweeted at me, and you've seen where he's behaved, and you know his past. You're the one bringing this thug in front of the committee, so what do you expect is going to happen? And keep in mind, too, this isn't anything new. Andrew Jackson challenged 9 people to a duel when he was president, and he also knocked one guy out at a White House dinner. There's been caneys before in the Senate, too. Maybe we should bring some of that back, and it'll keep people from thinking they're so tough and make us sit at a table and we can actually work out our differences without poking at each other and want to run to cameras and call people names. Maybe if we have some type of respect because we know there's going to be consequences for your actions, then maybe we can move on with all this, I don't know, jargon that happens around this place.
Oh, he's really not well spoken. I have to dig deeper into how that guy possibly got elected in Oklahoma statewide in the Senate. What an idiot that dude is. He also apparently said he's not afraid to bite in a fight. He'll do whatever it takes, and I'll bite anywhere I can. And he was implying that he was going to bite your dick. I mean, that's what he was implying, and I'm not trying to be funny. That's exactly what he was saying in another interview. All right, that's enough from those clowns. Here is now the President of the United States. Just a clip from him last night in his press conference, for which he does not give many, and there doesn't seem to be any big gaffes being reported about it. But here he is announcing last night that he had a positive meeting with the president of China. They're resuming cooperation on counter narcotics, military contacts, and more. About a minute, almost 2 minutes from President Biden last night in California.
And today, build on the groundwork we laid over the past several months of high-level diplomacy between our teams. We've made some important progress, I believe. First, I'm pleased to announce that after many years of being on hold, we are restarting cooperation between the United States and PRC on counter narcotics. In 2019, you may remember, China took action to greatly reduce the amount of fentanyl shipped directly from China to the United States. But in the years since that time, the challenge has evolved from finished fentanyl to fentanyl chemical ingredients and pill presses, which are being shipped without control. And by the way, some of these pills are being inserted in other drugs like cocaine. A lot of people are dying. More people in the United States between the ages of 18 to 49 die from fentanyl than from guns, car accidents, or any other cause, period. So today, with this new understanding, we're taking action to significantly reduce the flow of precursor chemicals and pill presses from China to the Western Hemisphere. It's going to save lives, and I appreciate President Xi's commitment on this issue. President Xi and I tasked our teams to maintain a policy and law enforcement coordination going forward to make sure it works. I also want to thank the bipartisan congressional delegation to China, led by Leader Schumer, in October for supporting this effort so strongly. Secondly, and this is critically important, we're reassuming military-to-military contacts, direct contacts. As a lot of you press know who follow this, that's been cut off, and it's been very worrisome. That's how accidents happen, misunderstandings. So we're back to direct, open, clear, direct communications on a direct basis.
All right. There you go. President Biden last night in California. All right. Trying to end the audio and news segment on a laugh. And tonight's brought to you by the funny folks at The Late Show, CBS with Stephen Colbert. From last night's monologue.
President Joseph Robinette Biden is in San Francisco today, meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in the first conversation between the two leaders in a year. A year. They'll have so much to talk about. Trade tensions, global flashpoints, who got hot over the summer. Spoiler alert, neither of them. Now, before the meeting, both sides tried to play it cool and set expectations low. In fact, both countries said that whatever happened, both Biden and Xi would not put out a joint statement after the meeting. So it's just going to be a case of he said, she said. The best. They can't teach that. China has a good reason to want to talk to America and its cash. For the past several years, China's economy has been struggling with anemic consumer spending and high youth unemployment. It's gotten so bad that second graders can't get a job at the iPhone factory. What? And I'm being told, in response to that joke, Apple has canceled Jon Stewart again. Oh! Now...
Yeah, there you go. Stephen Colbert Late Show on CBS. We'll talk about all that and I'm sure much more at tonight's Hangout. Hope to see you there at 8 East. If you're not already a subscriber, go now. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. This program is entirely funded by the people who listen to it. It's a free show, but it ain't cheap. I cannot do it without your paid subscription. So go sign up now, and I hope to see you at the Hangout tonight. Now, let's get to my guest joining me today. He is one of our favorites. People love when he comes on. We had an awesome discussion, as we always do. You can read him at the Daily Beast. He's also the CEO of the Rothkopf Group, which is a media company that produces podcasts, including Deep State Radio, hosted by him, David Rothkopf. He's the author of several books, including American Resistance, the inside story of how the deep state saved the nation. He's awesome on Twitter or X or whatever you're calling it, at DJ Rothkopf. Go follow him and tell him you heard him here. And his latest piece is what we talk about a lot at the second half of the conversation, titled GOP is Fighting a War on Democracy All Over America. It's so good, so important. I highly recommend it. Always great to get David Rothkopf on the show, as I do about every other week at least. Let's do it right now.
Oh, there he is. There he is. Could you give me a smile so I can do a screen grab? Thank you. Because I saw you on TV and you looked really, really handsome, and I wanted that same face. Thank you for joining me, David.
It's a pleasure.
Wanted to ask you just real quick, just a fun. We're going to get into some serious issues that you've been writing about and talking about them. The world is very serious, but I was just wondering what kind of a man, or I guess it doesn't matter gender, person you are, because I was just at the grocery store and I wonder who you are. Are you a self-checkout person, or do you go to the cashier? If all things are equal, nobody's there, you see a cashier and you see a self-checkout, which do you, actually, you might not even go to the grocery store. You probably have a person that goes. Anyway, can you relate to any of what I'm saying?
Not only can I, but I saw a story cross the wires yesterday at some point that Walmart and a couple of these other stores are thinking of getting rid of self-checkout because people don't like to use self-checkout. And I count myself among one of those people. It never works the way you want it to. It's always a pain in the neck. And inevitably, at some point in the middle of the self-checkout, a little thing pops up on the screen and it says, you need somebody to help you with this, which is exactly the opposite of the point, right? Of all the technological innovations that we have enjoyed in recent years, self-checkout has been one of the biggest disappointments.
Interesting to hear your analysis of. So you obviously do have some experience grocery shopping?
Yes, grocery shopping, and we also have self-checkout at the local drugstore at the CVS.
Everybody does the exact same reaction when the computer says you need to see a clerk. You pause and take a deep breath and just kind of look up like, oh, really?
Oh, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
It's like, I could have seen a clerk before.
It's just one red onion.
Yeah. Well, that's
okay. Well, I'm glad to hear. Yeah. See, not all technological advances are succeeding. I know you.
But I managed to make them. The last time I went to the grocery store and I got a whole bunch of stuff, I got into the line and I went up to the cashier and I was putting it all there. And I pride myself on going fast. I really like filling up that conveyor belt really quickly and doing a very neat and tidy job of it. And I got to a certain point where I had bought a gigantic, oversized, Wegmans, supersized quantity of blueberries and popped it right open and launched blueberries all over the store.
It's so funny you said that because I did it not too long ago and I immediately went into my phone and wrote it down as a potential for a stand-up bit. And I mean, just seeing, there were so many things to say about that. There were blueberries everywhere. Everybody knew I did it. Someone's going to step on them. It's impossible to clean. Look what I have done.
Yeah. You and I, same boat.
Yeah. We both like our antioxidants, apparently.
No, it's real important.
So let's get into what's going on. And of course, some of the articles that you've been writing over at the Daily Beast, very important stuff. But first, I do want to ask you, we're talking on a Wednesday, and that means the president, is he the president of China? Xi? Is it Xi? He's in Xi. Yeah. He's in California meeting with, I saw a picture of the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, and the governor there, Gavin Newsom, and I guess President Biden is also going to meet there. But you say, I'm trying to find the exact tweet. Here it is. The most important international story of today is Biden's meeting with Xi. Anything that enhances communications and understanding between the U.S. and PRCs at the People's Republic of China makes the world a safer place. Those who argue it is dropping our guard have it exactly backwards. And I don't know why you're saying these things.
Well, I'll try and explain it.
Thank you.
So you understand why I'm saying it.
Thank you.
I saw a story the other day, an article by a columnist in a big newspaper who said that, Joe Biden trying to have a good relationship with Xi Jinping is naive, and that Xi Jinping is trying to play Joe Biden, and that if he thinks we have a good relationship, it's only going to make it easier for him to launch into war or do any of the other things that he wants to nefariously do. Now, I don't think he's a great guy necessarily. I think Xi has got some real, regional ambitions that worry us, and I think he's certainly an adversary of the U.S. by many measures. But it's the most important country in the world other than us, and there aren't many big international issues that can be solved without us talking to China. And at the height of the Cold War, we had communications with the Russians for just that reason. And now we need to have communications with the Chinese. And shutting it down or saying we don't trust anything you say is a big mistake. And we've seen this in the past, when there was that balloon thing and we didn't really have military to military communications. That was bad. We need to have that. On issues like fentanyl, which is an issue that they want to address, where a lot of it gets manufactured in China, if we don't talk to them and deal with it, we're not going to solve the issue. And the same is true on a whole host of things, from economics to arms control to controlling international outbreaks of diseases to working on solving problems like Ukraine or other problems in the Middle East. We need to work with them. And Biden knows it. He's good at it. The last time he met with Xi Jinping, there was they had a successful meeting in Bali, and I'm glad they're doing it again.
The APEC conference in California is the most important thing happening today, probably not getting enough attention, and then getting ridiculously demagogued on cable and right-wing talk radio, et cetera. Probably, I'm sure that they're meeting. I don't know who said what you are talking about in terms of letting our guard down, but I'm sure it's a lot worse than that on several different powerful.
Oh, no, it is a lot. That was Josh Rogan in the Washington Post. And
he's respectable. Yeah.
Pardon me?
I think he's respectable. I'm talking about you may have a different point of view, which I appreciate, but I mean, what's Hannity or whatever, they just make up shit, by the way, when it's a Democrat.
I know. Look, if I wanted,
or Ted Cruz,
if I wanted to get the amount of bullshit that flows out of Fox TV, I'd buy a bull and I'd look up its asshole. I don't need to sort of add to it the tedious rants of the Hannitys and the Ingrahams and that crowd.
I fully understand that, but sidebar, don't you think it's important for us to know to some extent what those folks are saying because they're so influential? It helps us understand and maybe even combat head off their bullshit.
Maybe, but if they were saying something new every so often, I think the issue is, do they ever say anything new, and is it predictable? I think that's true with a lot of things. I get, because I'm like a foreign policy guy, I get Foreign Affairs magazine, the journal Foreign Affairs. And I look at the cover and I see who's written the articles. And I go, I know what this article says. And it's not because, I'm a smart ass. It's just, certain people don't really change their positions. Yeah. If I told you any issue, and I said, immigration, Sean Hannity, go, you'd tell me what he would say.
I used to love reading Foreign Affairs. When I first started on radio, I had no idea about anything. And I thought that would be the hoitiest. And I subscribed for a while. But
most people subscribe so they can put it on a coffee table and people.
Yeah, that's mainly what I did. That's true.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was my thing.
You get that?
I did it. I would go a lot further than that. I'd carry it around for people that didn't come to my house, like on the subway. I want everybody. Yeah. Okay. So another foreign issue while we're on it, let me just ask you, another issue, obviously not getting as much attention in the pages that time is allotted to when it comes to wars. It was a lot about, obviously, Ukraine and Russia's invasion. Now we're focused heavily on what's happening in Gaza and their invasion, but that doesn't mean we should look away. So my question is about that. I know there's news about the funding, but what would you say is really important for us to know about the conflict in Ukraine, Russia's invasion? Latest, any thoughts about strategy, news?
Look, the conflict in Ukraine is not less important than it was just because we're getting less news about it than we used to. The reality is that Russia is in a long-term effort. Remember, this invasion started in 2014. in order to take over as much of Ukraine as it can, devastate as much of Ukraine as it can, so that Ukraine cannot become a bulwark against its other expansionist ambitions, so that Ukraine cannot be credibly part of NATO or the EU. And also to sort of send a message to people within Russia that he's still a big, tough man in charge. And the reality is, while there's a bit of a debate, even within the Ukrainian government, about whether the conflict has stalemated, over the past few weeks, the Ukrainians have made some useful gains. They're getting new technology and they're using it well. They're making small bits of progress in the south. And they can still achieve the kind of gains that will put the Russians on their back foot and enable, when negotiations come, for those negotiations to actually have an outcome that's positive from our perspective. And I think that's the key. We want to have Ukraine be able to make enough gains that Russia says, this isn't going to work out for us. Let's cut a deal. And, to do that, we've got to provide them with aid. And the House Republicans stopped us from doing it. Now looks like this issue is not going to be taken up until after Thanksgiving. That's bad news. And it serves one person's interests, Vladimir Putin. Right now, the Republican Party in the House has adopted a stance on Ukraine, which every day it delays aid to Ukraine is a day it helps Vladimir Putin.
Well said. And I think I want to move on to one more. Well, I just want to talk a little bit about what's happening right now in Israel. And I guess my question for you is, any general thought? Yesterday, there was these huge protests in Washington, D.C. We've seen protests all over the world. Or in the UK over the weekend, there was a pro-Palestinian protest in the UK, like hundreds of thousands of people, tens of thousands that were pro-Israel yesterday. And they had John Hagee there, which I want to ask you about. Seems like a real oversight. I don't know how he slipped in. But there's been a lot of talk about this hospital, and the lights are off and the energy is gone. It's being bombed, apparently. So I'm not sure, what question you want to answer, but I just wanted to give you some space to talk about how things are going, how you see it, and maybe answer the question, I guess, which you asked, which I thought was really smart. Who speaks for the Palestinian people?
Well, I think that's the big question here. In the olden days, they might have called it the $64,000 question.
That was a long time ago.
The Israelis are going to go in and they're going to destroy Hamas. They should destroy Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist group. Hamas has done nobody among the Palestinians any favors. Good riddance to them. Now, the other potential group that could speak for the Palestinians, the Palestinian Authority, the Israelis have said, we don't think they're the ones. We're not going to let them be the ones. Now, personally, Israel, making these decisions for the Palestinian people, I think it's utterly inappropriate. And, the Palestinian people have the right to self-determination, just like the people of Israel have the right to self-determination. But the Israelis do control the situation now on the ground. And what they have said is that they're going to run Gaza for the foreseeable future. Well, they can't run it forever. And so the big question becomes, who can be a legitimate representative of the Palestinians to assume governance of Gaza and to be a counterparty in peace process that might lead towards a two-state solution. And right now, if it's not Hamas and it's not the Palestinian Authority, it doesn't exist. And you can't trust the Israelis to create it. Can the international community step in? Can they create a safe space for this to emerge? Can the United States play a constructive role here? I think all that's going to be necessary. But until there is a political entity that is not a terrorist group, that is representing the Palestinians, this is going to remain an open and festering wound.
And the one thing you didn't say specifically is how the Arab world, especially in the region, could or should, and what responsibility they would have. But it would seem that they really just always use the Palestinians for their own purposes, and they don't really like them, and they keep them in refugee camps. And so they don't seem to be stepping up to be the solution, much less the voice in any way. But I really don't know.
They haven't been thus far. Can they be in the future? It's possible they could be in the future. We don't know. But one thing that hasn't gotten a lot of notice, perhaps, is that, as recently as a month or two ago, I was talking to people who were saying very confidently, two-state solution is dead. There is no, this is a ridiculous idea of the olden days.
Before October 7th.
Before October 7th.
Yeah.
And literally it changed overnight. Joe Biden said that's the only solution. States in the region have said it's the only solution. Now, observers of all different political stripes say it's the only solution. And there's a reason. It's the only solution. The only fair solution is that the Palestinians get to control their destiny and the Israelis get to control their destiny, and that both sides find a way to live together in some kind of peace. Israeli domination of the Palestinians is not an answer. Israel being a democracy and letting all the Palestinians in and giving them the vote would end up resulting in Israel no longer being a Jewish state, which is important to the people of Israel. So we need another solution. And so one of the things that this conflict of the past few weeks has restored is the centrality of getting back to this two-state solution.
Okay, real quick, got to ask you, let's see in my notes. I do prepare. I have some things. It says here on my notes for Rothkopf, Nikki Haley, go. She's like the front runner behind Trump. She's really gained a lot of ground.
She has. I just saw, I guess it was a Emerson poll. Maybe it was just New Hampshire. Maybe it was broader. But she was the only one who was, in sort of strong double digits. And by that, I mean 18% or 20%. I think DeSantis was in fourth place. Tim Scott was in last place. He's no longer a candidate. Ramaswamy and just doesn't have the remotest chance. Either does, frankly, Christie or DeSantis. And so, I think it's reasonable to speculate right now that if they drop out before all this happens, then it'll come down to Trump and Haley. And I think there are a lot of Republican, old school Republicans who would like to see that advantage. Now, Nikki Haley has been as slippery on the subject of Donald Trump as anybody. And she has said she would support him if he were president, even though she says she doesn't think he should be president. She has said he was the right president in 2016. Clearly, that was not true. And she's embraced some really extreme positions over the course of her career, including on abortion. But, the question becomes, is she an over-the-top enemy of democracy who is a racist and a rapist and a multiple, felony indicted enemy of everything that we stand for? And the answer is not as much as Trump. So, that's where we are with the GOP. Is she likely to beat Trump? Not unless some very strange events occur around these trials in which he's convicted or he acts out in a strange way.
It seems hard to imagine that she would win primaries, Republican primaries across the country. We're looking at polling as a way to, and she's looking good at debates and whatever, and she is who she is. But that seems hard to imagine.
It's hard to imagine, but it was also once hard for us to imagine Donald Trump as a political candidate. For some of us, it's still hard to imagine that. And so, it's not impossible. I mean, the guy's capable of doing absolutely loony things that could ultimately, burn his bridges within his own party. So we've never been in this situation before. I think we have to have a little humility about that. We've never had a guy who was, 4 different sets of indictments, 91 counts of felonies. So I think we've just got to sort of watch and see. I think the other dimension of this, however, is at some point this is going to be a race between two people, not between abstractions. And voters are not going to be like, well, I'm a little disappointed with this about Joe Biden or that. They're going to be, do I want Joe Biden or do I want Donald Trump? And I think ultimately Biden's numbers will rebound as a result of that.
One thing I've never heard, and maybe you can just dismiss of this, and maybe there's more than 30 seconds. If Trump wasn't the nominee, and if he was found guilty in all the indictments, and if he went to jail, which he won't be, I don't think anybody thinks he's going to jail before the election, but if all those things were true, don't you think that he would still be running for president just because he would? And don't you think that a certain percentage, like decent percentage of people would write his name in even if he wasn't the nominee? I haven't heard anybody answer that. I just thought of it. Maybe it's stupid.
No, I think that's quite possible. The Trumpists, there's a loyal base of them out there. And
he could start a write-in campaign because he doesn't care about the country. He just wants to.
No, and he doesn't care about the Republicans. So if some other Republican won, he'd be happy to undercut this. What I like to think about when I'm feeling down is I like to think about the moment. Let's say it's November 6th of next year when Donald Trump has lost to Joe Biden by a substantial majority. And all of a sudden he realizes, the jig is up. The scam is over. And it's just him and a bunch of judges determining whether he's going to be free and whether he's going to have any money for the rest of his life. Because, he's been playing us. And there has to be a moment when the penny drops and he goes, uh-oh, I'm going to jail. And, I like to think of him grappling with that.
Some people meditate or they'll watch a show or do things, I've just planted some daffodil bulbs. That makes me feel good. But for you, it's thinking about that moment right there.
Yeah, it's a new thing, Trumpenfreude. It's like Schadenfreude, but for Trump.
All right.
And it makes me feel good.
Yeah, you got to sell that. I think you need to market that more. I just have to ask you one more quick question before we get to your amazing article, which I would call a one I would print. This article is so good, there's so much good in it that I'm going to print it out and I'm going to have it. I'm going to refer to it because but before I get to it, the Supreme Court has a new code of ethics, and I've been trying to tell my listeners, I too have established a new code of ethics for the program and for my work. And it's like very similar to the old code of ethics, and then I will do whatever I want. Is that similar to what the Supreme Court has decided? John Roberts.
It's exactly what the Supreme Court has decided.
Shit.
I mean, the Supreme Court
code of
ethics is complete BS. It's non-binding. There's no enforcement mechanism. And even though it's non-binding and there's no enforcement mechanism, there's a big loophole in it that says, they can do third-party events like the kind that Clarence Thomas was doing, and that's completely okay.
Oh, okay, good.
And essentially, it was the Supreme Court going, listen, you stooges, we're smarter than you. We're going to go and put this out, and that's as far as we're going to go, and there's nothing you can do about it. We had impunity. We've got impunity going forward. And, this is our fig leaf, like it or love it.
Yeah. The stooges in your scenario, I think, is the United States Senate or the Congress. Because
it's the people of the United States of America.
Yeah. And everybody who cares
about the Supreme Court, the position of the right wing on the Supreme Court is they are above the law. No one will judge them. No one is constitutionally able to judge them. They are kings and one queen, Amy Coney Barrett, and they'll do what the hell they like.
And technically, we could say all of the justices are. We just don't think the other ones would be in disagreement of this code of ethics, much less have been abusing it.
No, the others have come out and said we would like a binding code of ethics. So I mean, that's their opinion. The more so-called liberal justices are also the more law-abiding justices.
Everybody needs to go click on this article at the Daily Beast and subscribe. And when you subscribe, say it's for Rothkopf. And of course, listen to Deep State Radio, where I'm sure you're talking about this. I haven't heard it yet. But Republicans are fighting a war on democracy all over America is the title it's been given. And it's an appropriate one because you cover all of America, how they are doing it. You write in this article, that sound you hear, which sounds suspiciously like jackboots, is the Republican Party marching out of the closet and proclaiming its opposition to democracy. You also go on later to say, although the embrace of Nazi rhetoric, techniques, and tactics by the party's standard bearers should chill any American who cares about the country's future to the bone. In recent days, it has become absolutely clear that the leadership of the Republican Party has decided to publicly own their authoritarian aspirations, and you go on to spell that out. But my first question is, don't you think you've gone too far, you and others, with this comparison to Nazis and jackboots and stormtroopers and all of that? Isn't it? I hear a lot of people saying that, especially since President Trump's speech over the weekend. Haven't you gone too far with these? It's a little hyperbolic, isn't it?
No, it's not a little hyperbolic. It's a little bit too late. The reality is that when Trump uses a word like vermin that Hitler used, when Trump says we're going to rout out the communists and the socialists, like Hitler said, Trump says I'm going to set up concentration camps full of immigrants and I'm going to deport all 10 million of them, and I'm going to fire every Constitution respecting federal official and replace them with loyalist toadies. And I'm going to make loyalty to me the number one thing in the government. When, Trump organizes a coup against the United States government, when, as we just learned the other day, Trump, in meetings at the White House, his staffers were telling his lawyers, oh, he's not leaving. This was in 2020. Yeah. He's not leaving. He doesn't respect elections. When Trump has said, I would like to suspend the Constitution, this isn't a third cousin of the totalitarian playbook. This is it. This is what Mussolini did. This is what Hitler did. Trump last week said, when I get elected, what am I going to do? I'm going to round up my enemies and prosecute them. I'm going to use the government to silence my enemies. When the press said, oh, how dare you compare Trump to Hitler? Trump's spokesperson said, how dare you compare Trump when the press compared Trump to Hitler, Trump's spokesperson said, how dare you compare Trump to Hitler? When he takes office, you will all be crushed. He said, crushed. That's my point. My point is, that this is not hyperbole. This is not taking one or two things and extrapolating them into what they might become many years down the road. The Republican Party at the state level, governors and legislators, at the federal level, members of Congress and in the courts, have embraced the idea that they don't want this to be a democracy.
Right.
They don't want majority rule. They want minority rule. And they're not just talking about it. It's not just rhetoric. When Ohio, by a 13 percentage point margin, passed a constitutional amendment to guarantee the right of abortion, the first thing the legislature, the leaders of the Republican Party in the legislature did was they said, we're going to pass a law so they can't enforce this. In other words, we hear the will of the people. We just don't give a shit. And that's the same thing that happened in Wisconsin when they elected a Democrat to the Supreme Court there. It's the same thing that has happened in Florida when DeSantis fires publicly elected officials just because they don't agree with him, seeks to impose media blackouts on public events, even though they're public events, kicks the media out of them. I can go on and on.
Well, you mentioned the states. You write about this. You talk about Ohio and Wisconsin, and as you just mentioned, Florida. But you also, those are at the state level. But at the federal level, you write, the GOP once put up House speakers who at least claimed to see themselves as part of the country's democratic traditions. Then came Kevin McCarthy, who swallowed his momentary outrage at Donald Trump's coup attempt and sought to actively defend Trump for his actions. His brief run in leadership is already over, and now the boss is Speaker Mike Johnson, who says democracy is, quote, two wolves and a sheep deciding what is for dinner. He also explicitly said, we don't live in a democracy. And so you're talking now about what the leaders in the House have done and said, and how that's changed. Tell me a little bit. It's
not just the House, it's also the Senate. Mike Lee of Utah said we're not a democracy. Rick Santorum, former senator, said pure democracy is not a good idea because young people vote on some of these issues. This is a view, and I'm sure you've heard it. Maybe you've heard it on your own podcast, but there is this line that a lot of Republicans use these days. They say we're not a democracy, we're a republic.
Yes, I wanted you to split that hair for me.
Well, I mean, the line is moronic. I mean, everybody's heard them say it, right?
Yeah.
Because that's like saying we're not a car, we're a Toyota. You know, we are a republic and we are a democracy. We are a candy mint and we are a breath mint. And, you know, they can't quite get their brains around that logic, but they don't care to. What they're really saying is, I'm just getting you ready to hear that we are not a democracy. I'm just getting you ready to watch as we dismantle the democratic elements of, you know, our government institutions, which is to say, you know, majority rule or the rule of law or courts that honor legal precedent or any of these other things, because they're taking it apart. That's what they want to do. And they're starting at the state level. But if Donald Trump gets elected next November, it's going to happen fast. It's going to happen fast. And your kids may spend the majority of their lives living in a country that's not democratic.
Italy is that country.
Italy, you know, a volatile democracy. But
well, you
it's
just mentioned democracy. My kids, and people should know they're dual citizens, so they can go there if they want.
Well, the good fortune, that's their good fortune.
Yeah. Do your kids have dual citizenship? Mine do.
They do. They do.
Huh.
Austria.
Really?
Thanks to Hitler.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Thanks to Hitler, my father and his parents escaped. Austria a couple of years ago passed a law, said if you were forced out of Austria by the Nazis and you can prove it, then you can get citizenship. And I thought, well, having an EU passport sounds like a pretty useful thing to have.
Yeah.
Since if you have an EU passport, as your daughters do apparently, and you need healthcare anywhere in Europe, it's free.
Yeah.
If you want to go to university anywhere in Europe, you can for next to nothing. If you want to buy a house in one of these places, you can do it. And so I just thought it made sense.
Yeah, I think that it still makes a lot of sense. And you're going to have a spike in people applying if there hasn't already been. All right, well, I'll let you go because I got to go edit out you saying thanks to Hitler only and put that on the internet.
Oh.
Did you see Last Week Tonight this past week?
I've not seen it yet. Was there something special about it?
It was one of the best recaps or informative things I've seen. I've watched a lot lately on Israel Gaza.
Oh, I will. Obviously, I watch it every week because my daughter writes for it.
Yeah, well.
Obviously, I would pay extra to watch it if I could see you warm up the audience beforehand.
Yeah, I think that they should include that as
people should know that you are John Oliver's fluffer.
And I always bring the fluff in an original way. 2 shows ago, we taped the day before the marathon. And so I did all marathon related material and not great. It was all brand new. I like to be as relevant as I can. You can't talk about what John might, current events, he might be doing it. I usually get the script, but I was like, well, this will be great. A lot of people in the audience will be here for the marathon. And they were. And I had some good chuckles, but they were good premises, but they weren't finished. They were half baked but it didn't matter because I recovered, but still wasn't great. Kind of a stinker.
But this was like, what's marathon humor like?
Just anything related to, I think the best premise I had was just talking about how people at the beginning of the marathon, they take their clothes off and they just leave them there. And I mined that idea for jokes for a while. And just like, it was like everybody listening to this feels right now.
I'm sorry I missed it.
Yeah, it's real.
I'm sorry.
You would have loved watching.
I missed it.
You would have been dying laughing watching me struggle. I know you.
I probably would have. But what do you have planned for next week? Lawn care?
Let me just see what's going on in outside
it's like
the door.
I was planting some daffodil bulbs.
Yes, it's going to be mostly that. Relatable. It's that time of year.
Yeah, people will go, oh no, that's funny.
Who's planting their fall bulbs, folks?
Yeah,
it'll kill.
Dead silence. John Oliver comes out and he's like, what's going on?
Give me the microphone, Peter. David Rothkopf, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
There you go, David Rothkopf, and now more bonus Rothkopf, because we kept talking, and I was recording on one of the 3 devices I record all of my interviews on, and I asked him if I could just add this to it? And he said, of course, because it wasn't off the record or anything, just more really interesting information when I mentioned last week tonight in that episode and what I learned from it. And so here's just a little bit more from that conversation, which I thought was absolutely worth sharing.
Most interesting thing I learned, and I always learn when watching good stuff about the Middle East because there's so much, but that Netanyahu, the things he said about Rabin before Rabin was assassinated.
Oh, horrible, horrible. I mean, the movement, I wrote about it before, but I mean, he led demonstrations where the chant was death to Rabin.
Yeah,
months before Rabin was killed, and he led a fake funeral of Rabin. He was part of the movement that wanted to kill the peace process at any cost. And I think one of the things that people sort of don't keep in mind is for 25 years, he has been trying to kill the peace process. And that does play, does that excuse Hamas? No. Does that explain to some extent how we got here? Yes. And, one of the things that really drives me crazy, and there's no time to go into it here, but is that there, a lot of these people at this demonstration yesterday and these 3 kids who wrote this article for the New York Times about colleges, they're always like, well, this is an issue of moral clarity. And it's like, no, it's not. I mean, terrorists killing people is, there's moral clarity. They shouldn't do it. But there's moral clarity that Israel shouldn't kill innocent Palestinians. There's moral clarity that you shouldn't have an apartheid state.
Right.
There's moral clarity, et cetera, et cetera. It's a morally complex issue. And when somebody says it's morally clear, they're trying to push you away from, even considering the views of the other side.
Yeah, that's a phrase I've used at times, and you should be careful with it.
Well, it depends on if you use it narrowly, about the attacks of October 7th, it's fairly clear. But if you just pull the camera back a few feet, you will ask the question, how did this happen? Who funded Hamas?
Right.
Who propped up Hamas? Who created the conditions? Who directed the military not to be protecting the southern flank, and to move all their focus to the West Bank? What are the conditions that led to this? It's just not simple. And everybody's like, oh, no, this is simple. And I was driving, I'm going to leave now, but I was driving through North Carolina. We went to the beach this weekend, and we was driving through North Carolina on the way back. And this is Trumpiest country in the world. Redneck city, Tobacco Road. Everybody has a Trump 1 bumper sticker on their car.
Ugh.
And along the whole thing, through all these farms, there were Israeli flags planted in the ground. And I was like, what? You people, you hate Jews. What the fuck?
Oh, there's one group of people that hate more than Jews.
Well, Democrats, liberals.
Brown Muslims.
Brown Muslims. Well, that's it. And but also they're all evangelical.
Well, exactly. More importantly, they want to end up John Hagee. They want to end up there. Yeah. Wow.
But it's very weird. The politics of this is very, very weird.
Yeah, you got to include that point you just made.
All right. Well, then I say goodbye to him officially, and that is it. And I am out, and I will see you tonight at the Hangout, 8 p.m., patreon.com/Pete Dominic. It's going to be a fun one. It always is, but really looking forward to seeing you tonight, as I always am. So please join us. If you haven't, then stop by. We had like 60 people at last week's party. It was so great. Always rejuvenates me headed into the weekend. So there we go. That's it. Thank you to David Rothkopf. Go thank him for joining me. He's always so generous with his time with us here, and I always love when he stops by. So head on over to X or Twitter and at DJ Rothkopf. Go listen to his podcast, Deep State Radio. Get his book. Read him at the Daily Beast. Still coming up this week, Michael Ian Black, Dr. Jason Johnson, trying to get a hold of Christian Finnegan as well. And who would you like to hear on the show? Your suggestions are welcome for everything. standupwithpete@gmail.com. John Carroll is our Emmy Award-winning singer-songwriter. He writes all the music for the show, and we are so grateful to him. You can see him performing live as well. Go buy this song, johncarroll.org. Take it away, John.
Stand up, you gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got for your fence, even if it ain't a very friendly audience. Well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense, and you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.